Welcome to Short Takes on Geography with Dr. Lisa Benton-Short, Professor of Geography at the George Washington University and Chief Reader of Advanced Placement Human Geography. This discussion series is brought to you by the American Geographical Society, the foremost champion of geography for the benefit of society since 1851. We now return to Dr. Benton-Short's conversation with Dr. Lee Schwartz, Geographer of the United States, already in progress.
What I want to do is talk a little bit about how your office is engaged with bringing geographic awareness, the power of maps, but also kind of thinking outside the box and really beginning to help other people tell their own stories about where they are and the kinds of lives they lead. And I want you to talk a little bit about the role that you have in participatory mapping.
Certainly, I think that follows nicely with the previous comment you made, how we've changed the way we do things, because I think we've realized that if we don't engage with local populations and empower them to map their own geographic milieu, we're really not understanding it very well. We may map certain features, particularly those that are observable on imagery and older maps, but if we really want to get into understanding the way communities are organized and their human geography and the changes that take place, I think we have to provide an ability to spread the wealth in who's doing the mapping, not only to the U.S. government partners we have, but to other types of partners around the world. And that could be somebody in their basement tracing vectors from satellite imagery to communities out in the field, walking around and identifying structures in terms of what they are and what might be even within those buildings. And so one of the projects we've developed over the years, which is now a State Department flagship initiative called MapGive. And we've worked over the years, like I said, with OpenStreetMap and the humanitarian OpenStreetMap community to conduct mapathons where we focus usually on humanitarian crises that change the fabric of the area that may have been mapped previously or may have no mapping at all, and we engage communities with imagery that we provided that's processed so that anyone who wants to, who has a computer with some access, they don't have to be in the field. They can map remotely and choose, as you see on this particular example, choose a square and a matrix of the area we're trying to map and trace shapes of buildings and trace the lines of roads. And that automatically gets included in the OpenStreetMap platform that's available to everyone. And in this case, just a couple of weeks ago, we had a mapathon that we conducted with some of our usual partners in the US, such as we work with the Red Cross and USAID, but also with the Youth Mappers organization that has chapters all over the world. In this case, we worked with an organization in Uganda, Map Uganda. We worked with the youth mappers, and we also had 10 universities in Uganda engaged. And we, if you will, densified a lot of the area where most recently flooding took place. And so an old map won't help much if the flooding or an earthquake or something like that changes the fabric of the area, or if a refugee camp exists where nothing existed previously, because that's where refugee camps are. And some of these over the years turn into whole villages or cities with sometimes hundreds of thousands of people. So this is something we use to try to engage local populations, try to engage universities, and try to make everyone aware of the power of maps, the beauty of maps, and the real utility of participation in making a difference in particular humanitarian crises that take place.
I mean, I think many people would be surprised to think that the world is not completely mapped in the 21st century, but you're right to remind us that, things are constantly changing on the ground, and there's probably even parts of the United States that maybe not be particularly well mapped. And I was wondering, is the participatory mapping, can APHG students become participatory mappers? Is there a way that they can become involved with this kind of work?
Sure, sure. Not only is there a way they can become involved in it, but we can help them with some other organizations we work with to organize their own mapathons as well. So if you can initiate that, I'd be happy to figure out the best way to get some of the AP classes doing some mapping.
Well, I know we have some APHD teachers who have been teaching other teachers about OpenStreetMap and how to begin their own mapathons. And so I'll just use this as a great plug for getting even more students and teachers of AP Human Geography involved with participatory mapping, because I think it is a really powerful tool. It's a way to both understand the mapping process, but then the outcome of the map can be incredibly helpful in situations of crises or in terms of just investing in infrastructure or the kinds of needs that any community might need. And I know that AGS is very, very supportive of the AP Human Geography community in terms of getting them access and teaching around OpenStreetMap. So I hope if you're watching that you'll reach out to AGS and learn a little bit more about how we can help your students learn how to participate in these wonderful mapathons.
And just to be clear, we did not invent participatory mapping. What we did was we early on helped with the processing of U.S. government licensed commercial satellite imagery that would make this more broadly available, so that we're not just mapping a crisis like post-earthquake Haiti, when imagery was flooding the participatory mapping community because of the nature of the crisis, but we tend to target on events that are not as severe in nature, where there isn't imagery available unless we help process and provide it.
Oh, that's terrific. And we're going to just wrap up here, and I'm going to ask you one last question, if you don't mind answering it. And it's where do you see where do you see the future of geography going that is going to be useful in the next 10 to 20 years in terms of some of these big political geography issues that we've been talking about today?
Well, I think what's going to happen with a lot of the data overload we get is that I think we're going to have a lot more machine learning, artificial intelligence. Everybody's going to look to create the next greatest tool for mapping the world, if you will. And I fear that by doing that, we're going to miss the essential understanding of the human components around a lot of geopolitical conflicts. And so I'm not answering your question, because most of the time when people are talking about the future of geography, they're talking about how GIS has really driven the expansion of geography, and mapping has become so much more of a powerful and pervasive tool. And with satellites and micro satellites orbiting the Earth, we have coverage of every event taking place. We saw what was being done in Ukraine with the sharing of a lot of this information early on, prior to the conflict. But I think I'm a little bit old school, and I think if we don't integrate continuing to try to have a better understanding of the human component of conflict to go along with our increased ability to digitally map those components, then I fear we're not going to be contributing as much to trying to figure out how to effectively prevent and intervene in those conflicts as we could if the full toolkit of our trade and discipline were to be invoked.
Well, that's it's given me a lot to think about there. So I'm going to end it. That was a short but fantastic conversation with Dr. Lee Schwartz, the geographer of the United States.
Thank you very much. I enjoyed it.
Thank you for joining us for this segment of Short Takes on Geography with Dr. Lisa Benton-Short. Tune in for this and more great geography teaching resources at americangeo.org. Until next time.